Welcome to Shyam's Storytime. My name is Shyamla and I am a passionate storyteller. Today we are going to hear the next story of King Vikramaditya series. Are you all ready to listen? In the last episode, we saw that King Vikramaditya had disguised as a jewel merchant. He was on the way to the palace of Princess 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐠. That's where we stopped. As soon as King Vikramaditya was led into the chambers of the princess, he noticed that the princess was sitting there behind a screen and she was silent. Now Vikramaditya wanted to interact with her. There was a screen between both of them which was blocking their vision. So King Vikramaditya called his friend the Vetal to get into the screen and talk to him. As soon as Vetal entered the screen, Vikramaditya asked, "My dear screen, I want to talk to the princess. But look at this, she is so silent and I'm feeling bored. Can you tell me a story?" he asked. So the screen started to speak. Can you imagine? Even the princess was shocked. So the screen said, "Oh my dear King Vikramaditya, look at this, I'm tied on all the corners. Can you please untie me? Or can the princess please help me untie? Then I will tell you a story," said the screen. Immediately the princess summoned two of her maids and told them to untie the screen. The screen was untied and left on the floor and it started to speak once again. "King Vikramaditya, because you asked, let me tell you the story. Once upon a time there was a vast kingdom which was ruled by a king called Gendeshwaran. He had not one, not two, but 101 queens. But none of the queens were able to give him a son. So Gendeshwaran was very sad. He prayed to the goddess and very soon his first wife gave birth to a son. The prince was named Kantarupa. All the people in the palace, including the king and the queen and all their relatives, everyone showered their love and blessings on the little prince. Soon Kantarupa grew into a young adult and King Gendeshwaran wanted to find a suitable match for him. So he sent people to different parts of the kingdom and the neighboring kingdoms, and finally they found a suitable match for Kantarupa. Her name was Kantarupi. A grand wedding was conducted for Kantarupa and Kantarupi. The king and his queens wanted to keep them very safe because he had just one offspring and they wanted to take care of him and make sure that everything was fine. So Kantarupa and Kantarupi were kept on the 7th floor of a tall building so that evil eyes of others would not fall on them. Both of them were leading a happy life. Well, it turns out one day there were these apsaras or divine ladies. They were walking through the sky. They saw Kantarupa. They all liked him. They immediately picked him up and took him with them. Kantarupi started to cry like anything. But the king and the queen and everybody else started to search for Kantarupa. "Where is the prince? Where is the prince?" They all exclaimed to each other. Kantarupi said, "I don't know, he was here yesterday. Suddenly he's vanished." The 7 apsaras who took the prince with them took pity on this little girl, Kantarupi, and decided they would bring back Kantarupa at least once in 7 days so he can spend some time with his wife. It thus happened that Kantarupa was brought back to this 7-story building and he was made to live with his wife just for 1 day in a week and they would take him back. After a few months, Kantarupi was pregnant. She was going to give birth to a child. But all the family members by then got so annoyed of her because it was after she came into their family that they had lost their dear prince. So they drove her out of the palace. While the screen was narrating the story, it just stopped and said, "King Vikramaditya, I do not know the story anymore. Can you please ask the lamp that is there? The lamp seems to know the story." Now the lamp started to continue the story. Poor Kantarupi was walking the streets of the kingdom. She didn't know where to go. She went into the jungle. And few months passed and it was the day she was going to give birth. Luckily for her, there was a young woman in the forest. She was working at the crematorium at the edge of the forest. She took pity on Kantarupi and she helped her to deliver the child. a beautiful male baby was born. But this lady who helped Kantharupi was sort of a person who had evil thoughts in her. She didn't want this baby to survive. She asked another friend of hers, also who assisted as the midwife, to go and bury the child. But the midwife took pity on this child. She left it next to a snake's hole. The snake came out and immediately found out that this is not a normal child. This should be the grandson of the great king himself. So the snake picked up the child and left it at the Kali temple inside the sanctum sanctorium. After some time, the lamp also stopped speaking and said, "My dear King Vikramaditya, I do not know the rest of the story. Can you ask the pillow on which Princess 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐲𝐿 is reclining? That pillow knows the story." Then the pillow started to continue the story. The next day, the king came to worship the goddess, and suddenly he saw that there was a child. Immediately affection poured out of his heart. He imagined that by now, if Kantharupa and Kantharupi had actually given birth to a child, it should be something like this. He picked up the baby, took him to the palace and started to raise the child. This baby was named Madanakesari, and in a few years Madanakesari grew up to become a young man. Kantharupi, meanwhile, was roaming around the forest and sometimes into the streets of the kingdom. Nobody could even recognize her. One day it so happened that Madanakesari was passing through the streets and saw this young lady. She looked like a beggar actually, but somewhere within him affection poured out. There was a strong bond between him and this lady, he thought. So this lady was summoned to the palace. When she came there, he overheard a little calf talking to the cow that today the son and the mother are going to be united. Madanakesari somewhere knew that it has to do with something about his parentage. He ran to the king and asked him who his parents were. The king immediately said that he was an abandoned child in the forest. They went back to the temple and they tracked who the midwife was and found out that Madanakesari was in fact the grandchild of the king. So right now Madanakesari knew that Kantharupi was in fact his mother and he was raised by his own grandfather, the king. Then Kantharupi paid penance at the temple and wished that she gets her husband back. That's exactly what happened. Kantharupa was sent by the Apsaras back to live with his family. And all of them lived a happy life thereafter. Like this, the pillow on which the Princess 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐿 was reclining completed the story. So 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐿 understood that this jewel merchant was none other than King Vikramaditya himself. Very soon she was united with the king. The jewel merchant removed his disguise and got into royal robes. He was looking as a magnificent king. So right now King Vikramaditya is married to 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐿. Both of them walked out of the palace. They came straight to the Brahman's house where King Vikramaditya had actually handed over that little boy. They picked up the little boy and came all the way to Ujjain, which is the kingdom of King Vikramaditya. The boy was handed over to the Pandit who had lost his son, so mission accomplished. So who was telling all of these stories? You must remember, it is the puppet on the third step to the throne of King Vikramaditya. The name of this puppet was Komalavalli. So Komalavalli stopped the story and asked Kingbhojaraja, "Do you think you are worthy of climbing this throne? Just now I have told you all the greatness of King Vikramaditya." It said. By then it was dusk and Kingbhojaraja decided he would go back to his chambers, rest for that night and come back the next morning to climb the throne. Thus Bhojaraja went back home. Did he come back the next day? Were there more stories by the puppets on the other steps? You must wait for the next episode. I hope you all liked today's story. If you did, subscribe to my YouTube channel Shyam's Storytime. You will have access to all the stories that I upload. Every week you get to hear 2 stories. On Saturdays, there is a story of King Vikramaditya in English, and on Sundays, there is a Panchatantra tale in Tamil. All of these stories you can enjoy sitting in your living room from the comfort of your mobile phones. Watch, listen and enjoy all of these stories. My name is Shyamala and I am a passionate storyteller. I will meet you in the next episode. Bye bye.